Hello everyone. This story is about, what if Naruto was a one-man team and gets a harem? Please like, share and subscribe for more great stories like this one. Now let's start. It wasn't the first time Naruto had ever gotten angry, but something about the way the bitch had defiled his parents' names had rubbed him wrong. Then the emo team had to open his oh-so-holy mouth to add fuel to the fire. The fact that their sensei at least didn't seem to care that the arrogant prick got knocked on his ass was pleasing, but he was still a little angry. When he left the house, he really had no destination in mind and soon found himself in a clearing quite a distance from the village. Not really having anything else to keep himself occupied with, he decided to test his new sword. He planned out a few exercises in batches of 1,000. The first exercise was drawing the blade. In the middle of a fight, this simple action could save someone's life. If you were not used to how quickly you could draw your own blade, then you would have no idea how far you would need to plan ahead to block anything with said sword. Creating about 20 clones, each began the first exercise as a group. The sliding of the blades out of their sheaths was heard throughout the dark surroundings as he went through the motions. By the time he was finished, he knew that the drawing of the katana was slower than the ninja he was so used to by almost double because of the positioning of the scabbard and the length of the sword. Given that his drawing speed was still extremely fast with his ninjutsu, his speed with the katana was still rather fast. Next on his list was swings. He went through each main direction. Both shoulders to the opposite waist, both waists to the opposite shoulder, head to stomach, stomach to head, and a straight thrust from both sides. By the time he was finished, he had worked up quite a bit of a sweat. He assumed a meditative position before dispelling his clones. He felt the drawl of his consciousness as their experiences entered him. As he sat, lotus style, on the ground, he found out over the course of his training with them that the information was absorbed faster with the less information he took in. By meditating, he was able to tone down his sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch senses at will. Tonight he shut down all but his hearing, as he wanted to be able to tell if someone was trying to sneak up on him. He was pleased that none of his so-called comrades decided to show up. He wasn't sure what he would have done if they'd have pissed him off again. As the information came to an end, he dropped out of his trance-like state and made his way back to the house. He was only a little tired, but he'd done enough today. Upon entering the house, he borrowed the dining room table for a moment to seal away his gear before slipping it into his pants pocket. He wanted to keep all of his gear on him at all times on this mission since he didn't trust any of his companions with his possessions, especially the Uchiha, his bitch, and the Mott. Walking quietly into the room he was assigned to, he found his previously arranged sleeping bag and futon were now shoved off to a corner and looked as though it had gone through a blender. Sighing, he turned around and left. It seemed that his supposed comrades didn't know when to quit. It was nothing he hadn't dealt with before though, so he simply made his way outside and found a nice thick tree branch to relax in. At least it wasn't raining tonight and the breeze felt nice. All in all, it was a better environment to sleep in anyway rather than next to two potentially hostile people. He found a nice crook in an old tree and leaned back in it, falling asleep with a great view of the moon through the branches. The next morning, the residents of the house were surprised when no one knew where Naruto was. Only 3 seemed to be remotely worried about him though. Kakashi, because the boy was technically under his charge since he was the highest-ranking ninja on the mission. Then there were Tazuna and Tsunami, simply because the boy seemed to be able to relate to their plight somewhat. It wasn't until halfway through breakfast that the door opened, revealing a slightly disheveled Naruto, causing Sasuke and Kiba to smirk. "Naruto, where were you?" Kakashi stated, a bit angry that the boy had left the house and not said anything. "Training," was his only reply before joining them at the table and grabbing some breakfast. "Have a nice sleep though?" Sasuke couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of the boy being forced to sleep anywhere but in a comfortable futon or sleeping bag like the rest of them. "Yes, team, it was very relaxing." The sincerity in his voice was enough to wipe the smirk of the Uchiha's face. "Sleeping anywhere but in a nice futon like the rest of us must have been uncomfortable at least." "And what makes you think I slept anywhere but in the bed I prepared when we got here?" His own smirk made Kakashi suspicious and he turned to the other 2 boys, waiting for their answer. Kiba was about to answer but got stopped due to a courteous elbow from Sasuke. "I think I would like to know why as well." Kakashi glared at the 2 boys along with Tazuna and Tsunami, though at least theirs had no Ki behind them. "Don't bother, Hitaki. It doesn't matter. I'm used to such things." He began to turn and walk out the door, but stopped when Kakashi addressed him, and then everyone. "Naruto, wait a moment, please. I've made plans for all of us to begin a training schedule. You will all be required to practice until I say otherwise or the mission is finished. Now, unfortunately, our unexpected guests yesterday are alive and well. But Kakashi-sensei, I thought that Hunter Nin killed him." Typical. Thinking everything you see is what it looks like. Naruto ignored the glare Sakura sent him. "Naruto is on the right track. You must always look underneath the underneath. I'm guessing he knows more about this too. Before Naruto could answer, it was Sasuke to put in his 2 cents. Humph. So now we have to fight that Hunter Nin, and there's a chance that Zabuza isn't dead. Wow, so there is a brain in there under all that ego. Naruto replied with an expression of mock surprise before chaining to a deadpan look. From what I said, and Kakashi's affirmation, that would be the assumption of anyone with half a brain cell. Heck, I bet the flea bag could have gotten to that conclusion eventually. Kiba didn't seem to hear as he was too busy munching on a piece of bacon. But yes, Zabuza is still alive, although he will be in recovery for a while. The Hunter Nin used Senbon for a reason. Normally a difficult weapon to use effectively, once mastered it is mainly used to disable rather than kill. Though killing is possible, it is also very possible to put someone into a death-like state. When we were talking to the Hunter Nin after it was insinuated that Zabuza was not dead and that the hunter was not really one, the reaction, as you saw, was for him to make a hasty retreat. Okay, so then why are we training? Only Kakashi-sensei was able to take on Zabuza, and the Hunter Nin looked and sounded about our age. If that is true, then we should be fine the way we are, right? Naruto was regretting accepting this mission. It was quickly grinding on his nerves at how little they could comprehend of the real world outside the academy, let alone outside the village. Sakura, if you have an 80% chance to beat someone in a fight today, or an 81% chance tomorrow, which would you pick if defeat meant death? Well, tomorrow, obviously. I don't know what a dead last like you would have as far as ambitions, but I don't plan on dying anytime soon. Okay, well, we didn't need the last part, but the first part proves the point. If training every day until those two decide to attack gives us even 0.5% better chance of beating them, then wouldn't you say it is worth it? At her realizing nod, he gave himself a small pat on the back. This isn't the D or C rank missions that the Hokage gave you anymore. Once the Demon Brothers came into play, it became a high C, low B rank. With Zabuza in the mix, it's now a high B to mid A rank. Add in the Hunter Nin, whose abilities we know nothing about, and the fact that more ninja have shown up over time, meaning a possibility of more enemies in the future. We are currently stuck on a mid to high A rank mission with no backup able to assist us. We need every bit of help we can get, so if that means I have to personally put 200-pound weights on all of you, I will do it. He narrowed his eyes at them, daring them to tell him otherwise. Sakura and Kiba both swallowed audibly while Sasuke just glared at the insinuation that Naruto would think about forcing him to do anything. Well, now that that's out of the way, excellent explanation by the way, Naruto. Seeing a nod of thanks from the boy, Kakashi continued. So if you'll all follow me, we'll get to the training. He got up and, with the aid of a crutch, made his way outside, followed by a small congregation of curious genin. Before they disappeared into the forest, Naruto, who was bringing up the rear, as he really didn't want to go along, created a few Kage Bunshin to watch over the house. Never hurts to be safe. Good thinking, Naruto. Kakashi seemed to be gaining more and more respect for the blonde with each action he made and every time he opened his mouth. This was nothing like the reports he saw from the boys' school days. They soon arrived at a small clearing with a few large trees. Stopping in the center, Kakashi turned to his charges. Okay, today we are going to climb trees. Naruto chuckled when Kiba started climbing the closest tree to him. It obviously wasn't going well since the tree was so large around that it would cause a grown man to struggle with wrapping his arms a third of the way around. No, Kiba, we are going to climb trees without using our hands. A resounding crash was heard as the surprised Kiba fell backwards off the tree. It couldn't have hurt much since he was only a couple feet up, but he still managed to land on his head. Sensei, how are we supposed to climb without using our hands? Once again, the brain sees it at face value. While he thought he had said it quiet enough, it apparently was still heard by the bubblegum princess as she turned, ready to yell at him. Once again, Naruto is correct. You will climb them by manipulating chakra through your feet. This exercise will help you with chakra control and capacity. Making a ram seal, Kakashi began walking/limping up a nearby tree to demonstrate. Getting to the first branch, he tossed kunai in front of each of them before turning around and heading back down. So that's it. Use the kunai to mark your progress and try to beat your previous attempt each time. You may want to get a running start at first to build up momentum. Sasuke and Kiba wasted no time getting to their practice as they rushed towards the trees. Sakura, on the other hand, followed her sensei to the T, walking up to the tree before placing a foot. A thud was heard as Kiba once again found himself on his back. Shortly afterward, Sasuke was doing a backflip off the tree once he put a little too much chakra into a step. Both boys glared at their targets before making another attempt. Sakura, on the other hand, was already at the first branch and taking a little break. She called out to Sasuke once to show off her own skill, but only earned a glare in return when said boy saw that she had done better at something than him. Good job, Sakura. Since you got this down already, I guess that means you're on guard duty for today. Kakashi was proud that at least one of them got it, but that was short-lived. No, Kakashi-sensei. She should keep at it. Kakashi turned to the blonde that he completely forgot about and his eyebrow rose. And why do you suggest that, Naruto? As you said, this exercise builds both control and capacity. She was able to control her chakra well enough to get to the first branch on the first try, but she had to take a break after she got there. That points to a lack of capacity. She should keep climbing to build her reserves up. Kakashi had to admit he was right. Sakura, never mind, continue the tree climbing exercise. If you start feeling weak though, take a break. Sakura just nodded and went back to the tree while Kakashi turned back to Naruto. Now tell me, why aren't you climbing a tree as well? Is your memory that bad, Hitaki? Seeing the look on the Jonin's face spoke worlds. Yeah, what was I doing when I first showed up? And there goes the light bulb, dim, but technically on. Yep, I was water walking. Get any of those three to try it and they'll sink like rocks. Now think about how wide that waterway is and how long I stayed standing on it. You see, I don't need to do this exercise for control or capacity. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a bridge to guard. Just one more thing. How did you beat Kafu? The question had been bugging Kakashi the more he thought about. He gathered that Naruto had surprised the Jonin, but exactly how a Genin could surprise a missing nin of Jonin level just didn't stick well with him. When he was close enough, I put an explosive note on a branch as I crouched to jump to the next one. When I landed, I stopped and turned. Like a moth to a flame, the overconfident man stopped on my trapped branch to tell me off, and like an overconfident man, he never realized what was happening until it was too late. I had intended to just weaken him a little to make it a more even fight. But I guess he was so caught off guard that he slipped off the branch and fell all the way to the forest floor, breaking more than a few bones, I'm sure. After that, it was just a matter of the final stroke. Luck. It was mostly luck, but still this kid was smart enough to not panic, and instead try to make a situation where his chances increased. You know, Kafu is a missing nin with a bounty. If you had see you. It's sealed in a scroll in my left pants pocket. Not only had Naruto killed, but he also did his research, it seemed. You've seen the bingo book? Sealed in a scroll in my right pants pocket. I figure if I'm leaving the village, I better know who else is out here and what they're capable of. If I find myself facing one, I will know whether to fight or flee then. Yeah, definitely did his research. This kid was good, far too good to be a Genin. Kakashi began to wonder if the Hokage had already known Naruto's strength when he'd assigned the teams. This kid was easily better than his entire Genin squad. Sure, he had Sakura for the brains, Sasuke for muscle, and Kiba for tracking, but Naruto seemed like the full package. Kakashi knew Chunin that couldn't or wouldn't risk what he did. He began to wonder if they were going to have another Uchiha Itachi on their hands. Unfortunately, he wouldn't get his answer today. As much as I would like to sit and chat, I think we have a client that wants to get to work. I'll speak to you later if we have time. Naruto jumped off towards the house before Kakashi could say anything more. Hell, looks like the training is too tough for the dope. I knew he couldn't cut it as a ninja. Kakashi just sighed and shook his head as the comments about Naruto started to fly. He would do nothing to stop them, of course. Not out of hatred for Naruto. No, after learning some of what the boy could do, he was beginning to regret taking on the Uchiha, Obito be damned. His 3 students were more of a headache than he could deal with. Now if he had 3 Genin of Naruto's quality, they would be doing nothing but C ranks and low B ranks, which would at least let him do more than babysit. So much for the once mighty AMBU captain. Naruto met up with Tazuna as he was about to head out. The man seemed relieved when Naruto told him about what transpired at the clearing. Apparently Sakura had not made a good first impression on the man. On their walk to the bridge, they had a great time telling jokes at the other Genin's expense. Naruto learned even more fuel for himself as Tazuna went over the fight with the Demon Brothers. Apparently Kiba had been scared stiff, as was Sakura. Sasuke showboated too much and Kakashi had to rejoin the fight at the end to save everyone. Not one to receive without giving. Naruto talked about the academy days and how the Uchiha was treated like a god wherever he walked while Sakura scampered faithfully behind him. Kiba was nothing more than an overgrown dog that thought every woman was his for the taking. Tazuna had his chance to laugh at Naruto's recounting of the encounter in front of Ichiraku's, though he was a bit angry that the boy would treat a girl like that. He had already caught him looking at his daughter in a way that made him uncomfortable. When he told Naruto that, he was relieved when the blonde said he'd make sure nothing happened. Upon arriving at the bridge, Tazuna was approached by one of his workers. Apparently the man no longer was willing to put his life on the line for their future. He was dismissed and told not to come back as Tazuna seemed to age a little more. It's getting harder and harder, Naruto. It seems 1 or 2 people quit every day. Pretty soon there will be no one left. As much as I want to finish this bridge and give my family a better life, it slows down little bit by little bit. Even if they all quit, though, it won't matter to me. I will finish this bridge with my own 2 hands if needs be. Well, I don't know much about building bridges, but I am a little handy with tools. Not to mention I can do the work of many people. Just tell me what needs done, and I'll make sure it happens. Tazuna looked at the boy for a minute, seemingly measuring him up. Well, I don't know how you're going to cover for multiple workers, but if you're willing, who am I to turn you away? Tell you what, you show me how you're going to do this, and I'll give the work out till you can't handle anymore. The words had barely slipped out of his mouth before the whole end of the bridge was covered with Narutos, who all at once said, "Where do you want us?" Shaking out of his staring, Tazuna reminded himself that these were ninja, and for as much as he knew about ninja, anything was possible. Okay then, we'll start here. It took Tazuna over half an hour to find jobs for all the clones. But he stuck to his word, and by the time he got to the last one there, the bridge was covered in copies of the same ninja, with more copies running errands in town. He had gotten a bit inventive when he learned that Naruto could climb on the sides of things, and even upside down. He had the boy checking for faults in places normal men couldn't even consider looking. Each went wandering happily off with some spackle in a bucket to patch up any flaws they might find on the sides and even the underside of the bridge. Turning to the last one, he was trying to think of something else he might be able to have done when the boy turned to him. Don't worry about finding me something, I already have a job. Since I'm the original, I will be guarding you. Tazuna nodded in acceptance and started his rounds to check on his workers. The men seemed a bit more at ease with so many bodies around. The fact that it was all the same person didn't seem to affect them at all, as such a large grouping of ninja, no matter what rank, would be a deterrent for an attack. It would prove to be one of the most productive days he had seen in his life. Not to mention the bridge would be one of the best both on top and underneath. He was now debating hiring ninja for future bridge building just so he would have workers that could check the structural integrity of the entire bridge without the aid of pulley systems or barges. Little did the man know, but the boy beside him was actually still training too. Not just with the clones under the bridge either. No, Naruto had upped his resistance seals by a large amount. Just because he was heads over his peers did not mean he was going to relax. Years living on the street was more than enough time for him to find out that you may live through one beating just to get a worse one tomorrow. And he had had enough beatings in his life to not want any more. Even walking right now would be training. It may seem odd to those that watched him that he walked with an even pace and was working up a sweat, or that he moved his arms more than needed. But it was necessary to get the full effect of the workout. Even after Tazuna was finished with his rounds, the boy didn't stop moving. While Tazuna oversaw his workers from a point near the current construction area, Naruto stood nearby and practiced with his katana and ninjutsu. Every now and then he would see the old man look over and follow his katana, admiring its quality. He may have been a bridge builder, but no one in this area lived as long as he did without seeing at least a few blades. He wasn't going to ask the boy about it now, though. There was work to be done here, and he was the one in charge of it. The day was going smooth, and he had more workers than ever. He'd be damned if he was going to waste even a minute of it. Around lunchtime, Tazuna called everyone in to eat. Naruto told him that the clones that could would continue through since they didn't need food. Naruto himself brought out a fishing line and caught his own meal, much to the interest of the workers. They had lived here all their lives and had never seen anyone catch fish with such ease. It wouldn't be but a couple minutes before Naruto would hook a fish before dropping the line again. Once he stopped at 4, they were a little disappointed, but everyone went back to their own lunch because they knew that they had a long afternoon of work ahead of them. And with the sudden ambition their boss showed, they knew he was going to push them every second of it. The afternoon went much like the morning, save for Naruto having to dispel some of his clones, due to jobs being finished and thus not needing their help anymore. The newest part of the bridge would need to be finished before any more spot checks could be made underneath, and there were no more errands for the day. Naruto was still training with his blades when Tazuna called it a day. The workers all went home while Tazuna, with a huge smile on his face, waited with Naruto until the last of his clones had found a place to stop what it was doing. They soon found themselves back at the house looking at an exhausted Sakura with her head down on the table, and Kakashi reading his little orange book while Tsunami was working in the kitchen. "Where's the king and the court jester?" Sakura would have screeched at him if she had the energy to, but she settled for glaring at him, which looked more like she was falling asleep than anything to be worried about to the two new arrivals. They decided to keep at it. They were both about 20 feet off the ground by the time we left. Sakura pushed herself a little too hard and got a slight case of chakra exhaustion. "I see. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to borrow your bath, Tazuna. I think I smell pretty ripe about now from all the training I did." Tazuna just nodded while Kakashi raised an eyebrow as Naruto disappeared into the bathroom. "What training did he do?" Kakashi asked Tazuna as the man sat down heavily at the table. "What didn't he do? Those clones of his are amazing. Versatile too. He covered every job I'd lost a worker for, and I actually had to create some others just so all the clones he made wouldn't go to waste." Clones don't affect the main body physically, though. What did the real Naruto do? He walked around with me, and when I wasn't walking, he was practicing with those two blades of his. Which I must say, that katana looks to be one very nice piece of work. I wonder where he got it. He got it off a ninja he defeated. Kakashi threw a side glance at Sakura to let Tazuna know that he didn't want to say much more about it in front of the girl. Receiving a nod of understanding from the man, he continued. All I know is that the sword is very powerful in its own right if handled properly. If he's already training with it, then he has a high probability of being able to use at least some of its potential. Sakura, finally gaining some strength back, turned towards her sensei. He should give it to Sasuke-kun then. If it's so powerful, then only Sasuke-kun is worthy of having it if it's going to be used by anyone. Kakashi couldn't help but feel ashamed at his student, but didn't have time to reprimand her as the door swung open and the two other teammates stumbled in, looking like they had just been through a war. Training went well then, I assume? HN. The two boys slumped on the table and took up the same position as Sakura, hoping to see food in front of them before too long. At about the same time, Tsunami, Naruto, and Inari all entered the room. The later two took their seats while Tsunami set out the food. Dad, we're going to need more groceries for tomorrow night. Could you stop in town and pick some up? Tazuna sighed before nodding. Hi. We'll send Sakura with you just in case. Kakashi really just wanted to be away from the girl for a while. After she had collapsed during tree climbing from exhaustion, which he had warned her not to push herself into. He had to carry her back to the house and listen to her grumbling and whining about not being able to see her Sasuke-kun. It was grating on his nerves how much she worshipped the boy. For now, though, they would eat. They only made it a few minutes into dinner before Inari decided that people weren't pitying him enough and started his little outburst. Why do you try so hard? You'll just die like all the rest. Gato is too strong. HN, don't lump me in with your loser villagers. I am an Uchiha. I don't die. I will take down anyone who stands against me. Yeah, Sasuke-kun can take on anyone. This Gato guy doesn't stand a chance with him around. Me and Akamaru will plow down anyone to complete our mission. Isn't that right, boy? Arf. Kakashi and Naruto just sat there and continued to eat. At least they did until they were dragged into the conversation. See, even your sensei and teammate know better than to come up with hopeless ideas. They're the only smart ones here. Naruto just shook his head. The kid just didn't know when to shut his mouth. While I'll agree with you that I am smart, I have to say you don't know anything about us. Sasuke, while he is an arrogant prick, does have a few decent moves. Kiba with his clan jutsu would be more than enough to take on a few thugs. Sakura, well, she has good chakra control. Not sure what she can do in a fight, but maybe she just hasn't found her niche yet. Sure, they have Zabuza and that masked Nin, but we have Kakashi here who is world-renowned for his abilities as a ninja. He'll be taking on Zabuza while the rest of us take on the masked Nin. 4-on-1 seems like good odds to me. After that, all we need to do is find Gato and clean up the mess. You were just too soft. You praise your comrade's abilities and walk around all smiles, but you've probably never had a hard day in your life. Kakashi visibly cringed at Inari's words. As Naruto glared at the boy. If you want pity from someone for your so-called hard life, don't even think of coming to me. You don't know the meaning of the words that come out of your mouth. The boy had enough sense to back away from the glare, but Naruto's words just made him angrier. I don't know a hard life? I don't know a hard life. I've watched as our villagers have been beaten or killed. I've seen the way people are forced to steal just to survive. I've gone hungry many nights because the grocers in town don't have enough food to supply everyone. I think I know a hard life. Inari screamed as the tears started to come forth. No, kid, you've had some hard days, but you are far from a hard life. You have family, people who are there for you. You have a roof over your head and a bed to sleep in. You have seen people beaten or killed, sure, but you don't look like you've taken a beating in your life, and I doubt you've ever come close to dying. Have you ever wandered the streets, picking through trash to find your next meal? Have you ever slept in an alleyway in the rain because there was nowhere else? The villagers that you see so much of, do they glare at you like you were the bane of their existence? No, huh? I thought not. No, you don't know the meaning of a hard life. The group watched as Inari teared up and ran out of the room. Naruto just grunted and turned back to his meal. Naruto, was that really necessary? He's just a little kid. You didn't need to say such things. Besides, what kind of person would even stand to live like that? Stop making up stories to scare children. Sakura, now the target of Naruto's glare, shrunk back from him. Haruno, don't even think for 1 second that you know me or my life. Appetite now gone, Naruto stood and walked across the room. Stopping at the door, he turned to one of the few reasonable people still present. Hataki, I'm going to train. I'll see you in the morning. Hi. The man watched as the door closed. HN, where does he get off acting so rough? He doesn't know half of what he was talking about. I've never seen him with even a hint of sadness during the academy. Dobe just thinks too highly of himself. Sasuke was reminded of his own lonely life. He was pampered even after his clan was killed, so the only thing he was really without now was his family. Where did he even come up with half of that? Kiba couldn't imagine living with any of those things Naruto said. He had always had his clan around, a bed to sleep in and food on the table. Being the son of the clan had its perks. Money was never an issue. Because that was his life. Kakashi would be in for a long night of refusing to answer questions as he didn't want to broach a subject concerning Naruto's privacy without the boy's consent. After a few hours of getting denied information, Team 7 finally went to bed. Though with the lack of information that they craved, the implications of the pariah's life were quickly forgotten. In a clearing north of Tazuna's house, Naruto was busy reshaping the landscape. Stupid little brats. I would like to see any of them live through one day of my life without curling up into a ball and crying. Trees fell and were quickly shredded as his wrath tore the forest apart. Splintered logs lay in his wake as a gleaming black blade sliced through more wood. He wasn't one for needless destruction, but tonight he used it for anger management. If he'd have stayed in that house tonight, there would have been 3 very bruised genin before he tired out. He stopped after the 50th tree fell to his blade. Looking around and breathing slightly heavy, he sighed. That should be enough for now. No. He took a deep breath and swung his sword again. The next day found Team 7 all talking around the dining room table, acting like last night never happened. Kakashi had talked to Inari about Naruto's past, trusting the boy with a little more information than he gave to his own students. It was rather sad that he could trust someone he just met more than those from his own village. But they probably would have just used the information to further verbally abuse Naruto, and he wouldn't allow that to happen if he could prevent it. He was a little worried that Naruto hadn't come back last night, but out of all the jin in there he was the most capable, so he put it to the back of his head. So, since today is an off day for building, Sakura will be assisting Tazuna in getting groceries while Kiba and Sasuke continue training. The 3 nodded as they finished breakfast and set about their tasks. Tazuna and Sakura headed to town while Kiba and Sasuke headed east towards their clearing. Kakashi stayed in the house, opting to do some indoor training in his room. Being still a bit weak from his overuse of the Sharingan, he was sticking to normal exercises like sit-ups and push-ups. In the fresh-cut clearing Naruto had made last night, a young female was picking around the area looking for plants. She hadn't noticed the boy laying in the middle of the clearing, nor the pile of freshly cut wood stacked nearby until she was almost upon them. She was soon brought back to awareness as the body moved, cracking some twigs under his weight. Nearly dropping her basket of herbs, she cautiously walked over to him and leaned down to get a look at his face. She gasped at recognizing him. Now an internal debate raged in her head. She could leave now and not worry about anything, or she could kill him and save her group some trouble later on. Cursing herself for not bringing any weapons with her, then cursing the boy for sleeping on top of his, she slowly reached out a hand ready to choke him to death before she stopped. This wasn't a good situation and she could tell it. Her without a weapon and him loaded to the teeth, yet all out of her reach. If she tried for one, he would probably wake up, and if she tried to choke him, he'd definitely wake and she would be at a loss. She was brought out of her debate as someone spoke. I would go for stomping on the throat. Even if it doesn't break their neck, they would be in so much pain that they would leave themselves wide open for more attacks. She jumped back from the boy as he slowly opened his eyes before turning them to her. All without moving his body. It was almost as if he didn't consider her a threat. The defensive posture she took proved that she was trained, but he still didn't know who she was. At least she hoped not. She watched in fascination as he slowly rose to his feet, brushing himself off as he stood. So, can I ask what you were doing here? Picking herbs. For a friend. He's very ill, you see. She bent down to make it look like she was picking up another plant from the ground. With any luck, he would dismiss her stance as just getting ready to bend down for the plant. Well, I would advise against giving him that one. It's poisonous. She looked down at what she was about to pick and realized that she was indeed about to pick up one of the more toxic of this area's plant life. Despite herself, she blushed in embarrassment. You seem to have some knowledge of plants. Are you a woodcutter? She looked at the pile of wood behind him and raised an eyebrow at the amount piled up. No, I'm no woodcutter by trade. I have split a few logs recently though, as you can see. Oh, then what do you do? I'm a ninja, and this is where I was training. A ninja? Isn't that dangerous? Aren't you afraid you'll get killed? I may, it comes with the territory. If I die, that just means I was meant to, so I won't run away from it. If I was meant to die so soon, I would have been killed many times already. I see. And why is it that you are here, Ninja-san? I am here to stop a tyrant from oppressing this village. Why are you here, Nurse-san? To protect my precious person. Do you have a precious person, Ninja-san? Hi. I have a few people precious to me. That is why I won't die here, Hunter-san. The girl froze. He knows, oh Cammy, he knows, and I don't have any weapons. I'm dead. She turned to run but was stopped as she found herself encircled by his arms, then felt his hot breath by her ear. Now, Hunter-san. It would be rude to leave without at least introducing yourself. I am Uzumaki Naruto, and you are? Haku, Momochi Haku. What was he thinking? Was he going to rape her? If that was his goal, she didn't have any way to stop him. Haku. That's a nice name. Now Haku, I noticed something when we got close like this, and I want you to tell me about it. Why do you have a seal on you? What is he talking about? Zabuza-sama never said anything about a seal on me, and I haven't put any on. She was lost in confusion as Naruto found the time to examine the seal on the back of her neck. Let me go. I need to get back to Zabuza-sama. She wriggled hard, fighting his grasp until he let her go. She ran to the edge of the clearing before his words made her stop. By the time this is over, you will remember what you lost, Haku-chan. She saw him smile, but was far too distraught to think about it, so she ran. She ran away from his confusing aura and back to her home. To the man who had picked her up from the brink of death and gave her a life. Back in the clearing, Naruto had his eyes closed and was going over the seal he saw in his head. He had seen its likeness before in a scroll on basic sealing and was trying to recall its details. It was a memory modification seal, something to hide a section of someone's past from themselves. It was clear to him that there was someone out there that didn't want the girl to remember a key part of her life, and he was going to find out why. Gathering the rest of his belongings that he had stashed nearby, he made his way back into town. He had plans too, after all, and now they just became a little more difficult. Sakura had never seen a village in such a dire situation. Of course, that wasn't saying much since the only village she had seen was Konoha, which was one of the largest ninja villages. She knew they were wealthy in comparison to most, but to see a village that was so torn by someone's greed was an eye-opener for one as sheltered as her. Tazuna had led her down the dusty streets as she peered into alleyways which were crowded with those that could no longer afford to pay the living taxes put on them by Gato's regime. It was clear that the man would have to be stopped, but just how to do that was the difficult part. From what she gathered, he was not one to openly confront people, choosing to stay behind closed doors instead and let his thugs and mercenaries do the legwork. By the time they reached the grocer, Sakura already had a knot in her stomach while Tazuna chose to keep his eyes on the ground. Upon entering the building, she soon realized just why everyone here was so thin. The shelves barely had anything on them, and those food items that were there looked like they had to fight for survival just as hard as the villagers. Shriveled up vegetables, half-dried out fish, and crumpled boxes. The only good thing she saw was that there were no mice scampering around, but that was probably due to the lack of food as well. The rodents would rather choose to live in the wild and scavenge than stay in a poorly stocked building. They quickly got what they could from their list, checking off only 5 of the items as available. Paying the outrageous prices without one word from Tazuna, they headed back to the house. Sakura couldn't stand seeing people live this way, so she followed Tazuna's lead and kept her eyes on the ground, barely hearing the familiar voice as she passed someone. But not placing it as she tried to block out what she saw. Feels almost like home. When she turned her head to see who had spoken, she was met with the closing door of a building. At this point, she no longer cared what anyone said. The atmosphere here was too depressing, so putting it to the back of her head, she fell back and a step behind Tazuna. The old man beside her, however, used to the ways of the village, was not so blind. He knew that an unguarded purse here meant no food, and no food meant no life. People here learned the hard way that even when you look like you're not looking at anything, you still need to be aware of everything. Thus it came as a surprise when the boy that was passing them had spoken. Sure, they had found out that he'd had it rough, but to hear someone make such a comment as if they would have rather lived here was a bit more than he'd expected. He would leave the boy to his peace, though. He knew the building that Naruto had entered and knew he was up to something, but at the moment just didn't want to think about it. He had far too much on his mind already. Behind them in a small store stood Naruto, looking around at the available supplies. Oddly, this store was well stocked, unlike everywhere else in the village. Seed packets and tools lined the shelves while an old man stared at him, perplexed, from behind the counter. Naruto went around picking through the items on the shelves as the man got up and walked over to him very cautiously. Sir, if you were here for money, I am sorry, but I don't have enough for the payment this week. Please let me off this one time. My business isn't doing well with all of Gato's restrictions and WL. Naruto was for the most part ignoring the man until he heard Gato's name. So Gato is restricting farming here too. No wonder this place is so stocked. When he talked, the man realized that Naruto was not with Gato and quickly got excited. So you're here to buy something then? His hopes had risen exponentially with his revelation. Well, first I'd like you to tell me a bit about this restriction that this Gato guy put on you, and why you can't sell anything. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man, letting him know to leave nothing out. Oh, of course. Gato doesn't allow anyone to have their own farms or gardens anymore. If we try to start one up, he just sends in his thugs to destroy anything in the area and punish us. Continue. Naruto urged, keeping his eyes trained on the man's actions and body language. It was obvious the man was hesitant in divulging the information, as it could cost him a potential sale and some much-needed money. Well, with no one able to garden or farm, my stock just sits here and my family goes hungry. I tried once to start a small garden in secret, but they found out and took away my wife. Now I have only my daughter and one son. I'm sure by now they've killed her or slaved her away, but I hope to see her at least once more. If only to bury her properly. The old man lowered his head in sadness and shame. I see. Well, I'm going to need supplies. Gather what is on this list, please, while I get the rest that I need. Naruto took his list and tore it in half. Giving one piece to the man, he began his search around the store for his portion. The owner, of course, knew his store better, so by the time Naruto had half his portion, the man came over and helped him. Within 20 minutes, they had everything on the list crowding the counter. Ringing up the total, there were tears in the man's eyes as Naruto handed over the money for the items. It was overpriced, but he didn't blame the man. He had a family to provide for after all. Naruto took out one of his blank scrolls, quickly sealing everything away, just as someone else came through the door. Two someones, in fact. Both wore ragged clothes, but had the look of hardened fighters about them. Hey, old man. We're here for your payment. What's this? A customer? Hey, small fry. There are consequences for what you were planning, you know. Really, gentlemen? Well, I'll have to deal with those when they come. Naruto took his scroll and shoved past the men. Hey, punk. Just who do you think you are? One of the men tried to take a swing at the boy, but his target seemed to disappear. The pair looked around, then spotted the boy walking down the street away from them. Come on, Bunjiro, let's get that brat. If he can afford to shop in a place like this, then he must be an outsider, and that means he has money. The one who spoke darted out the door as the now-named Bunjiro looked back at the owner. Don't worry, old man. Once we're done with the brat, we'll be back for your payment. The owner could just cower away and pray that the boy kept himself safe. No one who valued their life treated Gato's men like that and got away with it. Naruto ran away into the forest, leading the two mercenaries away from the town. He had to slow his pace a little to stay in their line of sight so they wouldn't give up. No, he didn't want that. He had plans for them. He'd been through these woods few times now and knew exactly where he was going. Up ahead was a small outcropping that overlooked the ocean. A perfect place to stage a little accident. Come on, Bunjiro, we're catching him. He's boxing himself in. We'll have easy pickings this time. Shut up, Masao. I am keeping up. Let's just get this over with before I add you to the casualties list. The two glared at each other before turning their attention back to their prey. So they don't like each other. Even better, it would have been troublesome if they were friends. Naruto cleared the line of trees and ran right up to the ledge with both men hot on his heels. He slowly turned as they landed behind him. So, giving up? Just hand over your cash and we won't hurt you much. How about I tell you a story instead? Shut it, kid, we don't care what you have to say. Oh, but this story involves you. Don't be hasty now. It all begins with a scared little boy. He's running through the forest as fast as his little legs can carry him with two angry monsters behind him. They run and run, but no matter where he tries to go, they follow. Soon enough, he finds himself with his back to a cliff as the monsters close in on him. Naruto tried his best to act out the emotions in his little play. Yeah, and then they eat him and toss his remains over the side. Whatever, kid. If you're not going to give up willingly. Masao began to pull his dagger out of its sheath. Then we'll have to do this the hard way. Oh, but there's a moral to this story. You see, the boy was not really a scared little boy. He was a young warrior who made his living by exterminating monsters. He killed the monsters that were chasing him and made it look like they fought each other to the death. That way the monsters' den would think they just fought each other and fell over the cliff to their deaths. The moral is, never judge someone by their looks, even if it's a scared little boy. See, your partner gets it. He pointed over to Bunjiro, but instead of staying in one spot, his finger lowered and started moving over towards Masao's feet. Masao's eyes widened as he saw Bunjiro's head roll into his line of sight, then to the sword that he hadn't even seen the kid draw. Why, you bastard? He thrust his dagger only to hit nothing but air. He twisted around to find his target only to turn right into the pointed tip of a katana. The blade went right through his eye socket and with his rushed momentum, was pushed a couple inches into his brain. A look of shock froze on his face. Naruto slid his blade out of the man's head and wiped it off on the ragged before the Masao's body went limp and he dropped to the ground. It's a good thing they were just regular mercenaries and not ninja. If they'd had any training at all, that could have been a lot messier. He searched their pockets quickly before sealing away anything of value and pushing the corpses off the cliff. Taking a few minutes, he created one Kage Bunshin and sparred with it slowly, being sure to include the blood splatters in the path of their fighting scrapes. Then taking out his pipes again, he began playing a soft tune as he made his way back to his clearing, ignoring the few drops of blood that were now drying on his arm. At dinner that night, Naruto was the last to come to the table. He was dirty and sweating, but had at least washed his hands. Nothing spectacular happened at this meal until Sakura noticed a couple odd patches of color on his arm. "Naruto, what is that on your arm?" He looked down and noticed the long dried droplets before turning back to his plate. "Blood," he said nonchalantly. "How you cut yourself training?" What a moron. Kiba was laughing while trying to stay upright in his seat while Sakura joined in and even Sasuke gave a chuckle. Naruto fixed him with a bored gaze. "Who said it was my blood?" All laughing stopped. Kakashi sighed. "Who was it this time, Naruto?" The boy chose to finish what was in his mouth before answering. "Two mercenaries. They annoyed me when they were trying to push a store owner to give them payment. I lead them away from town, then killed them in a way that it would look like an accident." He never stopped eating as he explained his day. Meanwhile, everyone at the table but Kakashi and Sasuke was looking at him in horror. Kakashi looked to be thinking while Sasuke looked a bit pissed off. That or he was constipated. One of the two. "You didn't leave any evidence, did you?" "What do you take me for?" "I slashed their clothes with each other's weapons, making sure to cut in such a way that I could take their belongings, and if anyone finds them, they will chalk it up as a loss in the fight." "Their weapons. If anyone wants to go diving at the base of a cliff in the choppy ocean to search for them, then they deserve to come to conclusions." Kakashi nodded his head. It was a well-thought-out assassination. Had Naruto been his student, he would have been proud. Looking at said students, he could only hope they grew up quick. Sakura was shaking, Kiba looked like he was going to be sick, and Sasuke looked like Naruto had just stolen his life savings. "Well, Team 7 will continue our tree climbing exercise tomorrow while you guard Tazuna again." Tazuna looked relieved at the news. If the boy could kill, then he had the best chance of protecting the bridge aside from Kakashi himself. "When are we going to protect the bridge, Kakashi?" "That is our mission too, and we were the ones originally assigned to it." "Why let the dope take all the glory?" Sasuke spat. "Because you are still in training and I am your sensei. Until you complete the tree climbing, you will continue with that exercise. Now eat. You need to rest before tomorrow. It's going to be a long day." Kakashi had no idea just how right he was. That night, Naruto was up much later than everyone else, going over the seal he saw on Haku. He had sheets of paper spread out in front of him with numerous seals drawn on each. Half the pages held the seal that he saw, the other half showed possible counter seals. While it was true that each one could remove the seal, each also came with drawbacks. One would severely weaken the person while another would render them completely immobile, though for a shorter amount of time. Each counter he had came with its own downside, and he was having difficulty deciding which would be best. Signed to himself, he packed up his supplies and headed out into the night. It was routine for him now to sleep outside. He didn't mind though. The air here was crisp and clean, and the breeze was relaxing. There wasn't a single cloud in the sky, and it was just nice to watch the stars as he fell asleep. Climbing into a nearby tree, he was soon dozing off thinking about seals and techniques. The next day, as Team 7 headed into the forest to once again attack their greatest foes, the trees, while Naruto and Tazuna headed for the bridge. Despite the sickening feeling he had in his stomach, Tazuna wanted to know more about what the blonde had been doing in that store yesterday. No one in this town was dumb enough to go there. Though if anyone had the ability to do that, it was his companion for the day. "Naruto, what were you doing in a farming supply store yesterday?" "The same thing anyone who goes to such a store does." "I was buying supplies." "But why? You don't really strike me as the gardening type." "I don't really strike you as the killing type either, I am guessing, yet I have done so on numerous occasions." "That's true, but I feel I should warn you that growing anything won't go without consequence around here. Gato won't stand for it. Anyone who has tried to grow anything has been punished." "I could say the same about building bridges, Tazuna-san." Tazuna laughed hard and scratched his head. "That is true, isn't it? You will know why soon enough. Until then, I ask that you keep my business a secret from my peers. This is just one of many things in my life that I don't want them knowing about." "I understand. I won't tell a soul, and Naruto, thank you." "Hi." The two arrived at the bridge to see all the workers from 2 days ago already at their stations. Without being told to, Naruto made his Kage Bunshin army to fill in the gaps. The day went by much like the previous time, with Tazuna leading his men and Naruto doing what exercises he could. It wasn't until late afternoon that they called it a day. Due to their new progress, with Naruto's help, they were going much faster than previously, and the timetable for completion was shortening much faster than any of them had hoped. Everyone left in high spirits that day, and for the first time in months their families would see them come home with smiles plastered on their faces. Dinner at Tazuna's was a bit more of a spectacle. It seemed that the two other boys were finally able to make it to the top of the tree, and Sakura was able to make it without a break. Sticking to his word, Kakashi promised that they would be on guard duty as well the following day, making them all a little happier. Well, at least Team 7's Jinin were happier. The rest were resigning themselves to having to deal with the three all day. As they were cleaning their plates, there was a knock at the door. Naruto went to open it with his hand on his ninjutsu, but was caught off guard when a spear was shoved right through the door and into his stomach. Tsunami and Sakura screamed as Naruto fell backwards onto the floor holding his wound. Kakashi was on his feet the moment he heard metal meet flesh, and he rushed to the door taking a defensive position in front of his downed comrade. Kiba and Sasuke meanwhile shook themselves out of their shock as they took up guard positions in front of the family, both trying but failing to hide their smiles. The door burst open and showed a man in his early 20s with a long spear held out in front of him. When he saw Kakashi, though, his eyes widened and he dashed out into the night. Kakashi yelled over his shoulder as he pursued. Sakura, tend to Naruto. The rest of you stay on guard. The three Jinin just stood there and stared after their sensei. Seeing no one moving, Tsunami pushed past the boys and rushed to Naruto's side to check his wound. She was no doctor, but right now they didn't have a choice since none of the boys' comrades seemed to care one bit about him. Out in the forest, Kakashi had already caught up to the man and gave him a quick death. It was just a random mercenary that Gato had sent to try and take the old man out. The orders were written out in a letter in the man's back pocket. Grabbing the letter, Kakashi made his way back to the house and met with a sight that filled him with rage. Naruto was still on the floor being tended to by Tsunami while Sakura stood off to the side glaring down at the boy. Her two teammates were actually trying to pull Tsunami away from the boy, but were being held back by Tazuna and a pissed-off Inari. What the hell is going on here? Kakashi's booming voice stopped all action in the room. Sakura, why aren't you helping Naruto instead of Tsunami? I froze up. I was scared. I'm sorry. Though she said the words, she didn't look the part one bit. And why are you two keeping the client away from his daughter? He leveled his glare on Sasuke and Kiba, who flinched a little. You told us to protect them. We were trying to keep them out of harm's way. And you didn't think it would be easier to protect them if they were all together. Our mission is to keep Tazuna and his family safe. That includes his daughter. You should have brought them over to her and guarded them here. All three of you get out of my sight. I don't want to see you again until tomorrow. You make me sick. The three Jinin rushed out of the room, happy to be away from their sensei's harsh glare. Meanwhile, Kakashi rushed to Naruto's side to help Tsunami. He urged her hand away so he could get a better look at the wound. His eyes widened when he saw it. It's healing itself from the inside out. This must be the demon's doing. It's not going to let its host die if it can help it. For once, I thank its existence. He pulled out his medical kit and began to bandage the wound up before taking Naruto to his own room. He wasn't about to risk leaving him in with the other two boys. Fox or not, there were still ways to kill him. None of those in the house had noticed that through the whole ordeal Naruto had never made a sound. No cries of pain, hardly any twitching muscles, barely a sign that anything was wrong at all. The next morning, Kakashi was in a very bad mood. He hadn't gotten much sleep as he was watching over Naruto. It was only when Tazuna came in and offered to be on guard that he allowed himself to close his eyes. The enemies he was worried about were no longer just outside the house. No, he was worried about those inside the house now as well. Should they show any sign of foul play, Tazuna would be able to at least wake him up, if not deter them himself from entering. When he awoke the next morning, Tazuna had confirmed his suspicions that something was amiss when he was told that the other Jinin had tried to see how Naruto was doing. But they were easily turned away with a terse, "He's fine," from Tazuna and a promise to wake their sensei if they didn't go back to their rooms. Currently, he was sitting across from said Jinin and glared at them through the whole meal. Once breakfast was over, he told them to meet out front in 10 minutes. As much as he would have loved to make them train all day, he didn't trust to leave them alone. Naruto was out of commission for now, which meant someone had to guard Tazuna. This meant Kakashi himself would go along with his team. Leaving any of them behind would result in some questionable circumstances, of that he was certain. He followed closely behind them as they went to their rooms, making note of how many times they looked between him and the room that Naruto was currently resting in. He broke off into that room while they got ready and didn't come back out until he saw them standing out front from his window. Making a quick check of their rooms, he grabbed Sasuke's weapon pouch, which he most likely accidentally left behind, and went outside. When he arrived outside, Sasuke was about to say something but didn't have time as he had to catch the pouch that was headed for his face. Looking down at the bundle, he realized what it was that he caught. He glared at his sensei before turning and heading off towards the bridge. Apparently, Kiba and Sakura had been in on the plan too, as they scowled a bit before heading off as well. Tazuna brought up the rear with Kakashi. He had seen the exchange and was slightly confused. What was that all about, Kakashi? He whispered so the kids wouldn't hear him. They are planning on doing something to Naruto. I don't know what yet, but I have a hunch. Naruto is kind of the village pariah. It wasn't until recently that he showed anything that would show he had any kind of intelligence. I think the boys are threatened by it, and Sakura is so blinded by her crush on Sasuke that she'd go along with anything he said. Would they really do that? Harm their own friend? Kakashi snorted and almost burst out laughing, causing said Jinin to stare back at them in confusion. Kakashi waved them off, and they turned back forwards. They are no friends to each other. I don't know the extent of it, but Sasuke was the Rookie of the Year, Sakura was the top kunoichi, and Kiba is a possible clan heir. Naruto, on the other hand, was the dead last, thus their disrespect for him. I think now that he's showing his true abilities, they can't comprehend it. They were also used to being so far ahead of him that now that it's him over them, they can't handle it and would rather be rid of him and call it an accident. So it's jealousy then? I thought that type of thing would have been discouraged in ninja at a young age. Normally, yeah, but anything that involves Naruto is far from normal. He's hated by most of the village, so it's only natural that the hate the older generation has towards him got passed down to the younger generation. Such a waste. I would love to have 3 of them over the group I have now. I see. It's a good thing you were in charge of them then. Oh. If it's as bad as you say, then another team leader may have let them go forward with their little plan. True. I hadn't thought of it that way. By this time, they had made it to the bridge to find workers scattered everywhere. Some bleeding, others barely conscious. Tazuna ran up to one that looked to still be alive. Fujio, what happened? Tazuna, demon. The group heard evil laughing as a thick fog began to roll in over the bridge. So I guess our little present last night didn't do too much damage. Oh well, at least he got the worst of the little pests, it seems. Out of the mist in front of them walked Zabuza and Haku. And it looks like they're still afraid. Rooster Head over there is shaking in his shoes. Sasuke scowled at the man. I'm shaking from excitement. Oh really? Suddenly, there were clones of Zabuza standing on every side of the group. Sasuke, do it. Sasuke didn't waste any time as he blurred out and each clone splashed into water. Oh, it seems you have a rival in speed, Haku. It would seem that way, Zabuza-sama. Kakashi pulled up his Itai, revealing his Sharingan. Feel privileged, Zabuza. No one has seen this eye twice and lived to speak of it. In truth, Kakashi was a little upset that the clones hadn't at least injured the boy, but maybe there was hope for that yet. He needed something to knock the boy down a few pegs. Maybe it would get his mind of their blonde ally. He didn't have time to think though, as the mist thickened and he found Zabuza inside his guard. Forced away from the group, he called out to the others. Sasuke, Kiba, go after the other one. I'll take Zabuza, Sakura protect Tazuna. Sasuke smirked as he rushed right up to Haku, not bothering to wait for Kiba. This didn't worry Haku at all though, as she easily blocked the punch and following kick. She watched as Sasuke got more and more frustrated with each blocked attempt, wondering how someone who fell into a rage so quickly ever became a ninja. She saw the other boy running over, so she quickly caught the kunai that was aimed at her and did one-handed seals. Sensatsu Sisho. Forming a dome of water Senbon around them, she caused Kiba to stop in his tracks as he no longer able to get close without getting caught in the attack. Just before the attack was able to hit though, Sasuke disengaged and did a quick kawarimi with the only thing close enough. The only thing heard besides the sound of the Senbon hitting flesh was a yell of, "What the hell?" from Kiba and a yip of surprise from Akamaru, who was now running to his downed owner. Haku was sickened that the raven-haired boy would use his teammate like that. The dog boy was lucky that she hadn't been aiming for any vital organs. He would live, but he was out of commission, so at least she only had to deal with the Uchiha. She would make him pay for hurting someone he should have been watching the back of. She would make him feel pain much worse than his teammate did. You are despicable. Using a comrade to save yourself. Huh. I am the last Uchiha. You should be honored to die in order to save me. When you are the last of your bloodline, that is just the way things work. Really now? So what happens then, when 2 of the last of their bloodlines meet and fight? That's easy. The strongest bloodline wins, and there are none stronger than the Sharingan. The Sharingan, huh? I've heard of it, but I don't see it in you. Haku smirked behind her mask while Sasuke prickled at the jab. It just hasn't activated yet. It takes a life or death situation to do so. Which means I haven't met an opponent strong enough to even be my equal, let alone push me enough to be a challenge. Oh, you have met one. He was even eating under the same roof as you. The blonde one, Naruto. How dare you even compare such a weakling to me? A dead lass like him could never be a challenge to one such as me. Perhaps, but now you face another who will be your challenge. Now we will see who has the stronger bloodline. You, an Uchiha who has no claim to the true nature of his name, or I, the last of the Hayatan users and fully capable of using my bloodline. I will show you my greatest achievement. Try not to die too quick, mighty Uchiha. Makio Hyosho. Sasuke could only stand there as ice mirrors formed all around him. When he tried to escape through an opening that one hadn't formed in yet, one immediately appeared to block his path. Smirking, he gathered his chakra and performed his favorite jutsu. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. The fire blazed against the ice with Sasuke pouring as much chakra as he could into it. Smirking, he ran through the smoke to hide his escape, but was stopped when he ran face first into the ice mirror he thought he had melted. As Haku stepped into one of the mirrors, she laughed at the boy. Your fire won't work against me, dear Uchiha. This ice is imbued with my chakra. It would take a flame hotter than your little body can produce to even make them sting. Now learn your place in this world. As the last of her body melded with the mirror, Haku's reflection was duplicated on every mirror in the dome. Sasuke looked on in horror for the first time in his life as each reflection drew a set of Senbon. Feel the pain of betrayal, Uchiha. With that, the Senbon flew through the air toward the lone target. Back at the house, Naruto was just beginning to wake up. He felt a little sore in his chest, but after rubbing it, he found the wound had already healed over. This would have surprised most people, but for him this was life as usual. It hadn't mattered how bad the beating or how many times he was stabbed. Most wounds he got were healed by the next day. After getting dressed and doing some morning stretches, he was making his way downstairs when he heard a scream. He landed at the bottom with one jump, just in time to see a screaming Inari run out the front door. Let go of my mom. Realizing what was happening, Naruto followed the boy out and caught up just in time to perform a quick kawarimi with Inari and draw his own blades to block the two swords that were meant to slice the kid in thirds. Now, gentlemen, there are nicer ways to ask a woman out, you know. His ninja held firm as the sword it blocked was easily kept at bay. On the katana side, however, his arm was shaking a bit from the pressure. This one is either a bit stronger or, more likely, I'm not used to a katana yet. It might be a few years too early for such a blade. If Zabuza's reaction was anything to go by, though, it may not hurt to keep it around for intimidation purposes. The two Ronin drew back their swords and got into a ready stance. Shut it, kid. Gato wants this little whore to get back at that bridge builder, and Gato gets what Gato wants. Isn't that right, Tamatsu? Naruto had just enough time to register the sound of a blade cutting through the air before he was sliced down the back. Poof. In a cloud of smoke, he was gone, and so were Inari and Tsunami. The three mercenaries looked around frantically for their lost charges. Damn it. This is why I don't like dealing with ninja, they're always so sneaky. No offense, Tamatsu. None taken. I don't like dealing with my own kind all that much either. The new man replied. The sound of metal cutting through air was heard again as the two samurai turned in time to block a couple shuriken thrown their way while Tamatsu just jumped out of the way. He was a distance fighter and shuriken usually came before a close combat rush. To all of their surprise, though, they heard another poof as the shuriken turned into clones. Before they could react, the two samurai were out cold. While the ninja easily took the one charging at him out with a shuriken of his own. He stood there in the middle of the street outside Dazuna's house waiting for the attack to come. You're not bad, kid, I'll give you that. He was hoping to taunt the boy into giving away his position. He soon found out it wasn't necessary. Naruto calmly walked around the corner of the house and stared at the ninja. Tamatsu Yusuji, aka Herald of the Squall, missing mean of Kirigakure no Sato, last known rank, Shunin. It seems you have me at a disadvantage. You are well informed for a kid. I would ask your name, but when you're dead it doesn't matter. Uzumaki Naruto no known aliases, Jinin of Konohagakure no Sato. Naruto did a small bow while smirking at his opponent. I'm glad I picked up that bingo book on the way here. Otherwise I wouldn't have known whose heads to collect. Naruto slowly pulled the katana back out to test his theories and watched as the eyes of the Chunin got wider and wider with every inch that came out, proving that it was indeed a good intimidation factor. At least against Kiri ninja. And no way, that was when he made his mistake. The Chunin, knowing exactly who the sword belonged to, attempted to escape the one who seemingly killed him. Suedon, Mizurappa. With some quick hand signs, he made a small spout of water rush towards the blonde before running into the trees nearby and taking to the branches. He yelled over his shoulder as he heard the boy pursuing him. There's no way in hell a Genin could have defeated him, Who the hell are you? His blood froze as the answer seemed to be whispered right into his ear. Your worst nightmare, and now your death. Goodbye, Herald of the Squall. In a flash of steel and a spray of red, the deed was done. The Chunin now lay headless at Naruto's feet. After scavenging what he could and sealing away the head, Naruto burned the corpse so it wouldn't be contaminating the forest near Tazuna's house. He didn't want to chance Inari or Tsunami stumbling upon it if they decided to go for a stroll anytime soon. Heading back to the house, he found the two samurai kind of tied up to a post with Inari standing next to them, a huge grin plastered on his face. I kept them company, Nisan. Naruto let out a chuckle. He couldn't stop himself. Good job, Inari, and good job protecting your mother. That is what real men do. That is what heroes do. Naruto went over to the samurai and untied them. Inari was about to protest when Naruto gave him a smile and signal for him to wait. He went through their belongings, removing anything sharp enough to cut and anything useful to him, including their weapons. Their money pouches he tossed to Inari, whose eyes bulged at the weight. After everything was sealed away, he tied them back up correctly, making sure to do it slow enough that Inari could see. It was about this time that the two started to wake up. While they may have been a bit startled to see it was the blonde to greet them, they soon began to grin evilly. Looks like you're the lucky one, kid. By now your friends at the bridge are dead. And so is that builder. Inari was on the verge of tears as Tsunami ran out and clutched him to her in a mother's attempt at protecting her child no matter what the enemy was. Naruto, on the other hand, had a grin of his own on and was staring down the mercenaries. I don't care if the Three Stooges die, but you will be hard-pressed to find someone that could take on Kakashi. He already beat Zabuza once. He will do so again. He quickly beat the two with the blunt end of his sword before turning to the two distraught family members. Don't worry. Tazuna-san will be fine. I promise. Keep an eye on these two for me a while, please. If they start to wake up, just bash him on the head with a walk or something. Seeing them both nod as they wiped their tears away, he turned and sped down the road towards the bridge. Things weren't looking good for any of the bridge defenders. Sasuke was doing his best impression of a porcupine in the middle of the ice dome with the help of Haku. He had partially activated his Sharingan, but after sustaining so many injuries it was pointless. He was in so much pain that even breathing hurt like hell. Haku, on the other hand, was having the time of her life. Kiba lay outside the dome unconscious while Sakura stood beside Tazuna wondering what she should do. She couldn't see anything because of the dense fog, but she could hear Sasuke's screams of pain and the sound of metal hitting metal from Kakashi's fight. Kakashi was having a rough time with Zabuza as well. The mist was so thick that his Sharingan was practically useless. The only benefit it gave him was that he had just enough time to dodge most of Zabuza's attacks as they showed in his limited vision just a couple of feet before hitting. He still managed to get a slice on his arm and another across his chest, but he was still alive. None of him noticed as a blur shot towards the dome, keeping just outside of viewing distance of those inside. Naruto watched as Haku Saban repeatedly pierced Sasuke, never giving him time to block the projectiles. The attacks came from all sides it seemed, though he noted that each set was timed a little differently. After a few moments, Sasuke couldn't take any more and collapsed to his knees. Naruto was about to head in and bring him out, but halted as Haku's mirrors began to melt away. The girl walked up to Sasuke until she was just out of his reach. Notable by his half-hearted attempts to swing at her. You see, Uchiha, even one so great as you can fall. Without teammates to watch your back, you are nothing. Perhaps if you hadn't switched out with that dog boy, he would have been able to block the attacks at your back. Then you both probably would have outlasted me. Know that it was your arrogance that was your undoing. She brought out another Saban and prepared the final attack, but was stopped as another body blocked her path. Naruto, so Zabuza-sama's attack was pointless after all. I am glad to see you are well, but I must ask you to not interfere. I'm sorry, but I can't let you kill him. He may be an asshole, but he's still my comrade for this mission. And it is my duty to keep him alive if possible. It was at this point that Sasuke was able to gather enough strength for one more action. He quickly grabbed Naruto's left shoulder and right arm as he stood up. This way you will, die knowing that you, protected in Uchiha. Feel privileged. D-dope. Unfortunately for Sasuke, he had lost almost all his strength, so when Naruto turned around and backhanded him to the other side of the bridge, he was powerless to stop it. He collapsed in a heap as he was knocked out cold. Well, he won't be bothering us for a while. Now where were we? It amazes me that after such treatment you are still willing to save him. Trust me, it would be a lot worse for me if I didn't. Now, I have to ask you to trust me, Haku-chan. Haku cocked an eyebrow at him, though he couldn't see it because of the mask. But the way she turned her head to the side as she did it indicated to him she was questioning his motives. There is a memory replacement seal on the back of your neck, and I would like to remove it if you will let me. Haku took a step back. And why should I trust you to do such a thing? How do I know you won't just attack me while you have my back? You don't. That's why I am asking you to trust me. I don't want to have to do this the hard way. Naruto held out the seal he chose to use on her to show her what it was. I will place this over the seal on the back of your neck and will cancel the effects for as long as it's on. That will allow you to remember what you had been forced to forget until I can cancel the seal out permanently. If you want, you can put this on yourself. This edge needs to face up. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. He held the seal out further for her to take if she wanted. She cocked her head to the side again as if considering the offer. And what are the side effects of the seal? You will feel tired for a while, but you won't be harmed. You may not be able to fight at your full capacity until the effects wear off, but other than that, nothing. He smiled as she reached out and took the seal from him, studying it closer. Your seal is about here, he said, pointing to a spot on his own neck so she knew where to place the counter seal. Had you deceived me and said it did nothing, I would have skewered you where you stood, but you seem to be telling the truth, and you left me go in the forest when you could have easily killed me. I will return that favor with my trust. My life is in your hands, Naruto-san. Taking a deep breath, she slapped the seal on the back of her neck and instantly felt the vertigo from it. She could feel herself getting drowsy just like he said, but more importantly, she could see her true memories as they flooded back to her. In just a couple of minutes, she was on her knees crying as she threw her mask away. He killed them. It wasn't from the bloodline purge. He did it. Naruto was by her side in an instant, keeping her face from hitting the bridge. Haku, are you okay? I swear it wasn't supposed to hurt you. Let me see it. I'll fix it. She slapped his hands away from her. No, I have to have this. I won't allow him to control me anymore. Who was it, Haku? Who was controlling you? He already had a hunch, but he needed to get her to say it. Zabuza, in seconds, she was on her feet again with determination in her eyes as she weaved her way unsteadily over to where they could hear metal clashing. As they neared, they heard the new sound of dogs growling as the two jonin talked. Then through the fog, they saw a light crackling nearby, accompanied by what almost sounded like a flock of small birds chirping. Another few seconds, and the mist started to dissipate, showing a wounded Zabuza being held down by numerous dogs as Kakashi stood in front of him, a crackling ball of chakra in his hand. Zabuza looked over at Haku and smiled. Looks like you don't get to kill me today, Kakashi, said Jonin, ignored him as he rushed forward, intending to end Zabuza's life. He was stopped short as a hand grabbed his wrist and held him fast. He followed the arm to see a familiar face. Naruto, what the hell are you doing? Naruto just shook his head and looked over to where Haku was advancing on the immobilized Zabuza. Haku, get rid of these mutts so I can get this show over with. Then we can kill the old man and get our payment. Haku just walked closer. Haku, did you hear? It was you. Zabuza looked at his partner as she advanced on him. Her dangerous undertone was easily apparent. It wasn't my father that killed my mother, it was you. Zabuza now saw the corner of the paper sticking off her neck. He glared over at Naruto. So you figured it out. I admit I'm impressed. Haku continued as if he hadn't said anything. You killed my father when he refused to hand us over. Then my mother right in front of my eyes when she refused to help you with your plans. I couldn't do anything to stop it back then. I was barely able to make more than a ball of water. You covered it all up and trained me to be your tool. Using me all this time knowing that you were the one who killed my parents. Haku was now standing in front of the missing meme, glaring at him. You were sick. She once again created a dome of Saban, this time around her, at one time, father figure. With no way for the man to get away, Kakashi's dogs dispersed. You never did have the heart to kill Haku. Cold as ice, but still too soft. Zabuza began laughing up until the Saban closed in on him. With a sickening spurt of blood, it was over. The once mighty swordsman was now nothing more than a soulless pile of flesh. Haku stared at the corpse for a full minute before a pair of arms encircled her waist. Only then did she allow herself to cry as she turned around and collapsed into Naruto's chest. Naruto, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from her. She is still an enemy. She attacked 2 ninja of the leaf and killed 1. Neither are dead, came Haku's weak voice. What? Neither are dead. I've never killed anyone, until just now. Though I intended to kill the Uchiha, every attack up to this point was non-lethal. So why did you intend to kill Sasuke? The Cyclopean Jonin asked. He used his own teammate to switch out, forcing the dog boy to take the hit that was meant for him, but those 2 were not lethal. Kakashi wanted to puke. His own student tried to sacrifice one of his teammates in order to live? He should have never passed them, but he knew that whatever decision he had made at the time, the Konoha Council would have pushed the boys' team through. I will vouch for her, Kakashi. He turned to the blonde. She has more honor than your whole team combined. I will vouch for her. Clack clack. As touching as all this is, I am a very busy man. So how about we end this now? All conscious heads turned towards the unfinished end of the bridge to see a short businessman surrounded by hundreds of mercenaries. Naruto and Kakashi rushed in front of Tazuna, getting into defensive stances. I see that my hunch was right. Zabuza was no match for the Konoha ninja, and neither was that half-a-eye sent to get his daughter. At the mention of Tsunami, Tazuna took a step forward. If you lay a hand on her, I will gut you myself. Oh, the mighty bridge builder does have a spine. I'm sorry, my dear man, but in this world money is power. And when you're as wealthy as I am, you can afford a lot of power. Kill them. With a roaring battle cry, the wave of mercenaries charged forward as the small man disappeared from sight behind them. Kakashi, how strong are you right now? About a quarter. Shit. Haku will be out of commission for a bit. Kiba and Sasuke are out for now as well, and Sakura's pretty much worthless. Okay, I'm going to buy you some time. Take a soldier pill and rest a little. When you're ready, join the fun. Without waiting for a reply, Naruto charged the massive death head-on. As the two sides got closer, he cried out, Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu. In a huge cloud of smoke, the bridge was now filled with combatants from both sides. In seconds, they clashed in a huge cloud of smoke and blood as both sides began taking losses when fatal hit matched fatal hit. As the numbers dwindled, groups of fighters were split up. All of the lesser fighters lay dead or severely wounded as the battle masters jumped around them, guarding and attacking in a desperate bid for survival against Naruto's relentless assault. Kakashi was smart enough to listen to Naruto and was currently watching the fight, waiting for any sign that the boy was faltering. His cue came when a slightly bloody Naruto was slung out of the fray by the end of a staff. He had been fighting alone against 4 of the brawlers and holding his own before his foot caught on one of the fallen, and he was forced off balance. It wasn't a killing blow, but it was enough for an opening. That opening was filled before they could make use of it by Kakashi. He wasn't at 100%, but he couldn't wait any longer. Besides, these were just normal fighters, not ninja, and Naruto had already taken out about 3/4 of them with his clones. As he blocked the initial blows, a whistling was heard over the clashing sounds of battle. All heads turned towards the other end of the bridge, where a large group of people were now standing. The ragtag band of villagers were armed with anything they could find. Shovels, picks, axes, and even the odd cane could be seen waving in the air in fury. Naruto, now recovered from his spot on the ground, smiled at the sight and nodded to Inari, who was holding a miniature crossbow. He turned back towards the fight and glared at those still living that caught his eye. Everyone present was engaged with an opponent, but rather than helping any of them out, he rushed past them as he yelled towards Kakashi. I'm going after Gato. Keep the villagers safe. Kakashi only grunted in response as he blocked another sword strike with his kunai. Running to the unfinished area of the bridge, Naruto was in time to see a boat cast off. A smile formed on his lips. Gato was on the boat, smirking up at them, reveling in the cries of the dying. When this day was done, the ninja and the bridge builder would be dead. Even if they managed to win, it wouldn't matter. Where there was money, there were also reserves. People would always be willing to fight for money. As he looked up at the bridge once more, he saw a lone figure looking down at him. He smirked at the boy who seemed to have been with the ninja side before. It was too late, though. His boat had already cast off from the base of the bridge. There would be no stopping the inevitable. His eyes widened, though, as he watched the figure walk over the edge, but refused to fall. Instead, it bolted down the side of one of the pillars holding the bridge up. He expected the boy to try to swim towards him futilely, but cursed his luck when the kid just ran on the water's surface instead of splashing into its depths. Naruto ran towards the boat at full speed, dodging or knocking away the few arrows that came towards him from the boat's few defenders. Creating a few more bunshin as he closed in, he watched the boat's defenders draw out their close combat weapons, getting ready for him to board. He wasn't one to disappoint and jumped high in the air, causing the boat to rock when he landed on the railing. A few of the fighters lost their balance, and soon their lives followed as Naruto stuck to the planks, with chakra allowing him easier movement on the now unsteady ride. Gato saw the boy leap and cursed as his defenders fell one by one. He turned to those that were rowing and yelled at them to get up and fight too. He offered mountains of money to the one that could bring him the blonde's head. It was pointless, however. Those on the boat were the least skilled of his fighters, since he was so sure of victory, or at least a safe escape. His personal guard was sent to get Tazuna's family, but it seemed that had fallen through as well. Now he had his back up against the bow of the boat, gibbering at the kid like a fool as he offered him more money than he'd offered anyone, just to let him live. He promised to give money to Wave, to live in poverty, but his crimes outweighed his bank account. Come now, boy, I am rich beyond imagining. I could give you enough money to buy your own village. You could have any woman you want. Nothing would be out of your reach. I could give you everything you ever dreamed of and more. Naruto spat at the thought of it. You talk about buying anything as if everything were for sale. What I want you can't afford. What I desire isn't any material possession. What I dream for is respect. Ah, respect. You can easily buy that. With as much money as I have, people respect me or they fall. No one respects you, Gato. Fear you, sure, but respect, no. Respect is earned, not bought. You have earned the respect of no one here, and now you will no longer have the chance to right those wrongs. Naruto drew his ninja to one more and in a single fluid motion, sliced across. Whether you kill me or not, it doesn't matter. This village will still fa. Cock. Gato's words were cut off as the blade sliced through his throat. As he lay there choking on his own blood, he looked up and smiled at the blonde. Even through his pain and dimming vision, he had evil thoughts on his mind. Thoughts about the men positioned nearby. Men who had already been paid and would attack tomorrow even if no word was heard from today's attack. He would have his revenge on this pathetic town. As the boat floated lazily past the bridge, no longer having oarsmen to push it upstream, Naruto jumped off and tied it up where it had been before Gato had tried to run away. He took his time climbing back up since he didn't hear the sounds of fighting anymore. Reaching the top, he was finally able to see the aftermath of the battle. No mercenaries were left standing, and it looked like only a couple of the villagers had been either severely injured or dead, but all in all the fight was a success. He saw the bodies of Kiba and Sasuke side by side with Kakashi pulling the numerous Senbon from them with Haku's help while Sakura stood nearby crying at the sight. Haku still looked weak, but at least she was helping, and that was a good sign since Kakashi wasn't objecting. By the time he made it to them, they were finishing up with the last of the Senbon. I see things seem to have gone well up here. Gone well. Can't you see that Sasuke-kun was hurt? And it was that bitch there that did it. Sakura pulled a kunai out, fully intent on skewering Haku where she was kneeling as she checked Kiba for any more injuries. She ran forward but was stopped by a hand grabbing her wrist. When she struggled to get free, she was picked up and tossed backwards away from the weakened ninja. Looking up at her attacker, she found Izuna glaring down at her. Why? Why won't you let me kill her? She attacked Sasuke-kun because she was being manipulated. Maybe if you opened your eyes a little to see more than your precious Uchiha, you would see the world for what it really is instead of the sunshine and rainbows world you live in. Tazuna looked at the girl in disgust. Never had he seen someone so obsessed with another human before. Sakura, Haku didn't kill either of them. In fact, she went against her leader in going out of her way to make sure they didn't die. She may have attacked us, but at the time she didn't know exactly what she was doing. She only believed she did what she thought was right. To Kakashi's ire, Sakura just let out a humph and turned the other way, pouting. Yes, that is very mature. Sangi turned back to the now awakening pair. Ugh, what? Where am I? Kakashi-sensei? The bridge, the fight. Kiba shot up before putting a hand to his aching head and falling back down. His head turned to the side and he saw Sasuke. You bastard. You tried to get me killed. Kiba wanted to punch his teammate. Hurt him more than anything he wanted to hurt before, but he could barely lift his arms, let alone shift himself to a striking position. Instead, he settled on trying to glare the boy to death. Kakashi looked down at the boy in pretend confusion. What do you mean, Kiba? It was a smug Sasuke who answered him. I used to Kawarimi to get out of an attack. The closest thing I could see was Kiba, so I switched with him. He should be honored that he was so useful. Kakashi had enough of the brat. He drew his fist back and rammed it into Sasuke, much to the shock of everyone there that didn't know of the tension in the group. A sensei just knocked out his own student. They were brought out of their staring when Kakashi turned to them, rubbing the back of his head. What? He gave a big eye smile at them, causing a few sweat drops. Kakashi, I'm taking Haku back to the house. I'll leave some clones to clean up this mess. I need to see about getting rid of her seal. I also need to talk to you as soon as you're able. Getting a nod from Kakashi. He made his clones before picking up Haku bridal style and set off for Tazuna's house, never noticing the blush covering the girl's face. Later that night, there was one extra place setting at the table as everyone sat at a celebration dinner for their victory. Most people there were happy and talking animatedly. The only ones who weren't were the Team 7 genin. Sakura was still pissed at Haku, but she was happy that Sasuke was alive. Kiba was pissed at Sasuke but happy that he himself wasn't dead. Sasuke was pissed at everyone. He was pissed at Kiba for not being of more use, Sakura for hanging all over him and being even more useless than Kiba, Kakashi for punching him after a valid explanation. But most of all, he was furious with Naruto. The blonde had humiliated him like no one else had ever dared to do. Not only had he found a way to beat Haku by seeing something that no one else had, but he killed off most of the mercenaries and Gato himself. A glory that should have belonged to the Uchiha. Now he was going to have another special meeting with Kakashi about information that he apparently was not privy to. Him, an elite, was not allowed to hear what the dope had to say. Not even if it would help him grow stronger. Not even if it got him closer to getting his revenge. Then Kakashi went so far as to tell him he couldn't go through the gear that Naruto and he got off the mercenaries that they killed. He was told that since he had acted in such a way to destroy the teamwork they had been working on, that he would be denied those items that he should have gotten. It was just luck that the blonde had gotten in his way. Otherwise, that ice bitch would have been dead by his hand. Even when he punched out one of the clones to get the weapons it had, he found himself lacking as the clones were sealing everything away as they found anything of use. When he tried to pick up the scroll that the clone dropped, he was pulled back rather harshly by Kakashi and ordered to protect the bridge builder. Once again, someone got in the way of what he needed to get stronger. As the revelry continued, Naruto led Haku upstairs to Kakashi's room where they would have some privacy. Once there, he began to work. An intricate seal array soon covered Haku's neck and back. Luckily for them, Zabuza was not very proficient with seals. As such, they wouldn't need anything too taxing to cancel it out. With the array in place, Naruto held his palm to her back and began to channel his chakra. Instead of the normal sealing process which made the seal condense into its final form, a counter seal drew the target seal out of its finalized form and back into its original state. The only downside was that the counter seal's intricacy had to match or surpass that of the seal. In many cases, this was nearly impossible without knowing the original seal intimately. A few minutes later, the entire memory replacement seal was in its basic form and intertwined with the counter seal. With a wet rag, they were able to easily rub both away. The process had caused Haku a bit of discomfort as the seal was pulled away, but the refreshing feeling of her mind being in one piece more than made up for it. Now that Haku had time to sit and think, she began to sob slightly as the realization of all that had happened hit her. The memories of Zabuza killing her father and her mother in front of her was too much. Then she came to the memories of her training with Zabuza. He had been a harsh sensei and drove her to the brink with his training despite her desperate pleas. No matter how much she would seet or bleed, if she didn't do what he said, she was punished. He had arrived back at their hideout one night with a huge smile on his face. He had found the seal that had changed her life. After that point, what was once so clear became a little fuzzy for a few years of her memories. She could remember traveling with Zabuza thinking that she was simply a tool for him to use. The numerous odd and often morally questioning missions they had to do. She remembered the short businessman's eyes as they roamed over her body and her disgust at his leering. She remembered her first encounter with Team 7. How everything was going well until a blonde boy showed up and ruined it. The meeting with the blonde in the woods where they had learned each other's names. How he knew exactly who she was and didn't attack, which still confused her a bit. She saw the fight on the bridge. How she had seen the Uchiha use his own teammate. Then how she trusted Naruto to help her, going so far as allowing her to put the seal on herself. As soon as the seal hit her, she had been overwhelmed by all the memory she had lost. It had to be real too, since Naruto, for all she knew, had never seen her parents and would have had no knowledge of her training. She cried then, for the first time in years, but at the same time she felt a need burning inside her. Today was the day she had taken her first life, and it was that of her so-called father figure. She had taken it willingly and didn't feel remorse for him, but it was still her first actual kill. The first time she watched as the life left someone's eyes by her hand. She had watched the disdain in his gaze turn to surprise when her needles pierced his flesh. Then the look of realization that followed when he knew that it would be his last breath. Suddenly overcome with grief, she turned in Naruto's arms and cried openly into his chest. He didn't push her away, he didn't call her weak, didn't sneer at her or laugh. He just held her close, rubbing her back and trying to soothe her. The only other effect on him was that he was now blushing brightly. They had taken the top half of her battle kimono and her shirt off in order to draw on the seal, and now she was pressing her uncovered front against his chest. It took the better part of an hour until she finally settled down. She was out of tears and out of energy as she fell asleep in his arms. Gently, so he wouldn't wake her, Naruto lay her down in his futon. He blushed a bit at her exposed chest, but tore his thoughts away from it as he covered her up and crept out the door. As he rejoined the party below, Kakashi walked up to him and grabbed his shoulder before motioning Naruto to follow. Once they were in a secluded room alone, they sat down facing each other. "What is it this time, Naruto?" As I slashed Gado's throat, he was mentioning something. I wasn't able to stop my blade in time, but I can guess. I'm betting he has other men waiting somewhere to attack should the bridge attack fail. Starting tonight, we will have to be on guard. If I'm right, they could attack at any time. Good assumption. We'll have to take shifts until the bridge is finished. We'll do it in pairs and alternate every 8 hours. One team with Tazuna, one at the house, the other resting. Teams will be me by myself, you with Sakura and Sasuke with Kiba. That should keep us decently even. No, team should be you with Sakura, Kiba and Sasuke, and Haku with me. I don't trust the others to be alone with her, and Sakura is the weakest of us, so she should be teamed with the strongest. Kakashi smiled at this. I'm so glad you think I'm the strongest, Naruto. How humble of you. Naruto smiled back. Well, maybe strongest is pushing it, but you do have the most experience. The two laughed as they traded jibes back and forth until Naruto felt a chill go up his spine. Without warning, he rushed out to the party and looked around the room. There were people missing who shouldn't be. He leaped up the stairs, barely touching any before he hit the landing before sprinting down the hall towards Kakashi's room where Haku lay sleeping. The door was already open, not a good sign. He barely registered Kakashi catch up as he crashed into the doorframe, using its opposite to swing into the room. They were just in time to catch the two blades that were swinging down on the unconscious body in the middle of the room. You just don't know when to quit, do you, team? Naruto kicked Sasuke back away from Haku as Kakashi lifted Sakura off the ground by her weapon-wielding arm. You disgraced yourself, you disgraced your team, and you disgraced your village. Now, even though you've wiped us through the mud, we still won the battle, and yet you were trying to stomp your boot on us, trying to drive us further into the muck. Just what did you hope to accomplish here? What do you care, dope? She is the enemy, and I will kill all my enemies. Sasuke attempted to throw his kunai at Haku, but it was intercepted. The loud clang of metal on metal waking the sleeping girl. Haku looked around the room in confusion for a couple seconds, taking in the scene. Kakashi was holding the pink-haired girl off the ground while Naruto stood between her and Sasuke with his ninja held out to the side. A kunai lay half buried in the floor mats a few feet from her. Realization hit her as she began to back away into a corner away from the hostile couple that were glaring down at her. Get out of the way, dope. I will kill my enemy. She isn't your enemy anymore, Uchiha. She has her memories back, and she will not attack us unless we attack first, which you obviously don't seem to understand. Once an enemy, always an enemy. Now move. Sasuke. The boy glared over at his sensei. You are attacking an unarmed ninja that is cooperating with us. She has the potential of holding valuable information. Killing her would be in violation of mission objectives. As it stands, simply attacking her will have to be brought up to the council once we return to Konoha. If you want to make this harder on yourself, then keep this up. I will restrain you and toss you on the floor at the council's feet myself unless you cease this action. You dare talk to me like that, Hitaki? You go right ahead and tell the council. I've had people do that before, and you know what it got them? Nothing. I'm far too valuable to risk, so I can do as I please. You keep thinking that, team. The new voice from the doorway came to them just as Sasuke was hit from behind. After he fell over unconscious, Kiba was revealed standing in his place. Kami, that felt good. Sakura was livid. How dare you use such a sneaky attack on Sasuke-kun, but I can see why. You're so weak and pathetic that if you... She never got to finish as Kakashi knocked her out as well with a quick chop to her neck. Kiba walked over to the now mostly aware Haku, making all three of those still conscious tense. They had no need to worry though as Kiba looked at Haku. I want to thank you for not killing me on the bridge. I know it was well within your power. I also want to thank you for putting the Uchiha team in such pain. He deserves more than you could have made him feel. Thank you. She did a slight bow while holding the blanket to her chest to keep her modesty. Well, I guess this means some modifications to the teams. We will have to work in 2 shifts. 12 on 12 off. At the confused looks from Kiba and Haku, he explained. It seems Gato had a backup plan. There will be another attack sometime soon. We'll work in teams of 2. It will be Kiba with myself and Haku with Naruto. Since Haku has had rest and Kiba was injured pretty bad in the fight, Naruto's team will have first watch. Getting nods from those involved, he picked up Sakura. Kiba, get Sasuke and follow me. These two are too much trouble to let roaming around free. Naruto, when you are ready, you may start your patrol. After Kiba and Kakashi left with Tweedledee and Tweedledum, Naruto addressed his new teammate. Well, Haku-chan, looks like we have work to do. Meet me out front, and we'll get to work. Hi Naruto-kun, she waited until he was out of the room before uncovering herself and getting dressed. Her gear had been stripped, but since she could make weapons out of water, it wouldn't matter much. Cautious of another attack, she took the window to get out of the house instead of going through the crowded first floor. When she got to the front of the house, Naruto was already there waiting for her. Seems he takes his job seriously. That makes at least 2 of them. Maybe 3 since the dog boy, Kiba they said his name was, had enough sense to know I had aimed to disable and not kill. She walked over to him, making sure that he could hear her presence. You don't have to stomp, Haku-chan. I have very good hearing. He hadn't even turned towards her to talk. So you have a bloodline that enhances your senses? Something like that. She could hear the undertones saying that it was something he didn't want to talk about. I see. Without another word, the two headed off into the night to start the first patrol. It took 4 more days until the bridge was finished. The ninja kept up their teams of 2. Naruto and Haku patrolled at night and guarded Tazuna in the morning. Afternoon, Kakashi and Kiba took over while the other 2 rested and ate. After dinner, Kakashi and Kiba would do some searching until returning at midnight to switch over. Sasuke and Sakura were bound in a room all to themselves, formerly Sakura's room, only freed for meals and bathroom breaks. They had made a few attempts of getting free, but Naruto had put suppression seals on them to keep them somewhat under control. With their weapons gone and their chakra locked up, they were of little use, but at least this way even Tazuna could muscle them around if needs be. This ended up being a major benefit for Naruto and Haku, as they didn't trust to leave the 2 unattended as they slept. When a couple villagers came and offered their help, they were readily placed on guard duty while everyone slept. They were more than happy to help after hearing why the 2 ninja were subdued. In a village where everyone was working hard together for the goal of saving their country, little was more valuable than teamwork. Naruto and Haku were just starting their 5th patrol when one of Naruto's clones popped. He had been using them to scan portions of the forest constantly, looking for the pending attack. It cost him some mental exhaustion, but it had just paid off. Haku, we need to get back to the house now. Hearing the urgency in his voice, Haku immediately spun on her heel and followed him back on the short trek to Tazuna's house. As soon as they arrived, Naruto burst through the door to find Kakashi and Kiba still up, talking about their next patrol route. Kakashi, let's go. We found them. Kakashi looked at Kiba. After we leave, I want you to cut the others loose. If there is a group out there, then there is a possibility that they could have some slip past and try to attack here. You may need backup. The boy gave a nod before Kakashi turned back to Naruto. Lead the way, he ordered, and the 3 shot into the forest. So what can you tell us about them? It's a bunch of mercenaries just like at the bridge. There didn't look to be any ninja with them, but I wouldn't count them out either. There could be 1 or 2 samurai though, so they should be our top priority. It was a couple of miles until they reached the camp, but eventually Kakashi got a good view of what Naruto described. He did indeed see a few samurai, but they looked to be more along the lines of Ronin than true masters of the blade. Okay, we'll start with the largest long-range attack you have. Make 3 points and attack from all sides. In the confusion, we should be able to take out most of the worst targets easily. Clean up what you can while they're confused. When they start getting organized, fall back and we'll strike again. We should be able to hit them 2 or 3 times until they put up a decent defense. All 3 of us should be pretty well rested by now, but try to conserve your chakra. We'll need it when they get organized. The 2 younger ninja nodded in understanding. Kakashi was elated. He had 2 experienced ninja who knew how to follow orders without question, and even gave suggestions without thinking that they would immediately be accepted. They knew their skills and carried out their tasks without whining about it. How he wished this was his Jinin team. He could have spent all night reveling in that fact, but they had a job to do. With a nod, they split up. In the camp below, men and a few women were just getting ready to move in on the town. Final preparations were being set into place for the assault. The villagers would have no warning. A slight cry of pain jarred everyone's attention to the center of the camp, where a man was falling to the ground with a kunai embedded in his head. "We're under attack," was cried out by those closest to the dead man as everyone shot into action. Before most could get to decent cover, though, attacks started raining in on top of them. Ice projectiles flew in from the southeast, impaling many. A hurricane-force wind blew men into weapons racks and each other from the southwest. From the north came a large dragon made of water that slammed into men, sending them sprawling to the ground. Right behind the attacks were blurs that shot out from the shadows. Kakashi followed right behind his Suidan, Suryaden no Jutsu, slicing away at those it had hit and sending kunai and shuriken at anyone near enough to be a good target. He saw them beginning to regroup around him, and with a quick Shunshin was clear of all danger. Over on Haku's side, she passed by the many bleeding bodies of her Hayatan, Hayachu. Normally she wouldn't have killed the men, but something in her awoke when she got her memories back and took Zabuz's life. She viewed these men as people who could potentially do the same to someone else that had been done to her. She pictured Zabuz's face on all of them and killed without mercy. Unlike Kakashi, she didn't rush. instead choosing to form each ice blade perfectly before making it fly towards her targets with deadly accuracy. The most devastated area, though, was Naruto's by far. Not only had his initial futon, Daytapa, thrown the camp into disarray, but when he started his assault it was pure chaos. Hundreds of lightly armored, black katana-wielding Kagebunshin raided in on the unsuspecting hired goons. It didn't seem to matter how many they destroyed, a new one would just take its place. Morale in that section quickly fell as men and women were cut down in droves. Then as soon as the attack started, they stopped. The camp gathered itself, trying to find some semblance of leadership until it all started again. By the time the second assault was finished, the former organized camp looked like it had been through a brutal hurricane. Debris lay everywhere, while in the center a small group managed to pull some wagons onto their sides and a makeshift fort, along with a few other groups that were scattered about the area. Out in the trees, the three ninja regrouped. Okay, good job. We got more than I'd hoped. Now for the hard part. The ones left will be the best of their fighters that were ready when we came. Don't be reckless. If you have to retreat and regroup, do it. Same sections, use whatever you can to take them out, but keep yourself defended as well. Don't let them flank. Kakashi Taicho, instead of breaking up for this, should we try staying as a group? We can hit each group randomly, then retreat and hit another. That way they never know which to cover. Meanwhile, we will be able to tear them apart little by little. Even if we tire before we can finish them, there won't be enough to raid a house, let alone a town. It was a little odd for Haku to call the man captain, but it seemed somewhat fitting at the moment since he was the ranking ninja. Kakashi seemed to mull the idea over a bit before nodding. We'll try that. If it's not working after a while or becomes too dangerous, then we pull back. Agreed. This was beginning to seem less like a C-rank mission turned A-rank, and more like an A&BU operation with each passing moment to them. He wasn't complaining, though. He would take this over babysitting the brats any day. Had the council given him a choice, he would have taught Sasuke what he could about the Sharingan when he had breaks from A&BU missions, but they insisted that he be the boys' team sensei. He guessed that their goal was for him to teach the Uchiha more than just how to use his Sharingan. They spread out just a little bit as they scouted the camp, looking for the best target to hit. The easiest was a small group that was staged on one side of an overturned table. They were guarding what they could see while relying on the table to keep their backs safe. A fatal mistake, as they soon found out when shards of ice shot through the wood and into their back. One group down, 6 to go. The next was a little more defended. After seeing the fate of the first victims, they were taking no chances and watching all sides. The piles of logs they were between would not be easily breached by Haku's ice spears, and any head-on attack was going to be seen. After a little deliberation, Naruto sent in a disheveled and beaten-looking clone to give himself up. The men behind the barrier were cautious and made the clone drop its weapons. Luckily, the clone was behind some rubble, so the defenders never saw them poof into smoke as they hit the ground. Once the clone was disarmed, it walked towards them. One man came out with weapons ready and bound its arms behind its back. Leading it back behind the barrier, they soon started telling the other ninja to give themselves up. All they got in response, though, was a word from the clone. Boom. It was a spectacular display of fire and smoke, and when it was over, there was a good-sized crater with a red-tinged edge. 2 down, 5 to go. Since the former defensive point had guarded 2 other sides, those were now open on a new front, leaving them slightly more accessible. Running through the smoke from the exploding clone, the 3 ninja advanced on the 2 targets. Haku and Kakashi went to the left while Naruto went to the right. It seemed a clash of fire and ice as Naruto used a couple weak Keton jutsu to burn down the wagon that was being used as cover, burning those inside alive before throwing kunai at their flailing bodies, mercifully killing them. At the other side, Kakashi was pulling water out of the ground, still drenched from his dragons, for Haku to create a cloud of Samban to rain down into the ditch that held a group of 3 defenders. 4 down, 3 to go. The last 3 defensive positions were strategically aligned. Each was able to guard the other's back while still looking towards the outside of the camp. It was going to be difficult to rush these survivors. They would have no doubt braced the structures they had behind to protect them against the first assault method, while keeping enough openings to see if attackers were coming. Any ideas? Kakashi looked at the 2 hopefully. Haku was panting slightly while he was bleeding from a few cuts and sweating. Naruto seemed the least affected. He was covered in blood, but none of it was his own, at least that's what he surmised from the lack of wounds. He was still a little drained, though. Even with a villager guarding the dynamic duo, he had kept his senses open as he slept in case they slipped by, making him slightly exhausted. Haku, can you make any ice mirrors? Naruto turned towards Haku, watching her as she seemed to be figuring out if she could. Maybe a few. How many can you make? 10. I think I can make about 13, but they would only be up for a few seconds once fully formed, and I would need water wherever they need to be made. That will have to be good enough. Kakashi, I need you to put as much water as you can between two of their little forts. Once you have enough there, Haku, start making mirrors in 2 lines, about 3 feet apart and as close as you can between each of them. Once they are up, we will rush through. Since they are able to watch all directions between the 3 of them, they shouldn't be guarding their middle as much if at all. We each take a pile and hope for the best. I'll send a few clones with each of us once we're close. It was ballsy, but about the best option they had aside from a siege or getting backup, neither option appealing to any of them. All right, we'll give it a shot. As soon as the water hits the ground, start making your mirrors, Haku. We won't have a whole lot of time before they figure out what's happening. Ready? The 2 teens gave a nod as he stood up and started his hand signs. Sudden, Mizurappa. A jet of water shot out from Kakashi's mouth and right between 2 of the forts before he ducked back down. They could hear the jeers from behind the walls. Huh, losing your aim, ninja? Are the sneaky little bastards getting tired? Haku was the next to stand and, concentrating, she began to form the mirrors up as thin and close together as possible. The tunnel would be short, but it should be enough. With Naruto and Kakashi blocking any projectiles coming towards her, she was able to put her full attention into her jutsu. When the last of the mirrors was in place, she whispered to her comrades. Go. They were off and sprinting the distance to the tunnel as projectiles flew at them from 2 sides. Then they were in. They could hear a few more pangs as spears and arrows hit the ice behind them, and the clattering as the jutsu started to crumble. Just as the last mirrors fell, they were out the other end and immediately split off to their designated shelter. The confusion was evident in the hushed murmurs inside each post as the 3 ninjas snuck up to the easiest entrance point. They signaled to each other with their fists clenched around small cylinders to 3. On 3, the cylinders flew over the blockades and into the midst of the defenders, exploding in a cloud of thick smoke as the ninja jumped over and unleashed hell. Screams echoed once more into the night as more mercenaries fell in the confusion and chaos that ninja thrived in. It took only minutes, but by the time the smoke was clear enough to see once more, 3 ninjas stood facing each other, breathing heavily and dripping with blood. Some theirs, most not. They simply stood there facing each other down before one cracked a smile. As Naruto showed off his bloodstained teeth, the other 2 couldn't help themselves. In the adrenaline-filled aftermath of the battle, they stood there and laughed like madmen. It was more of a mental defense than anything. They had ended hundreds of lives since the mission started and had found a trusted ally in each other. Someone that they could trust with their back and would watch the backs in turn. After a few minutes of reflection, they walked off into the forest, limping and exhausted, but alive. So, Kakashi, what are you going to do with the team and the dits when we get home? The man sighed. He really didn't want to think about the fiasco he would have to deal with in Konoha. A C-rank turned B-rank turned A-rank mission. It's true that this could have gone a lot better, but it also could have gotten a lot worse. Without Naruto's help, and through him Haku's help, they wouldn't have pulled this off. There would be hell to pay for someone, but the 3 in his charge were going to be the biggest issue. You know, I'm not sure. More than likely the council will brush it off and worship Sasuke, so he stays content. I know there will be issues that come up, but you know, I don't think I really care right now. I'm half tempted to add them to tonight's body count and call them casualties. Well, you still can. We won't tell. Naruto grinned at him while Haku gave an animated nod. Kakashi laughed. Huh, as much as I'd like to. If I went back and told them I got the last Uchiha killed, if they didn't send me to be interrogated for suspicion, they would probably just execute me out of spite. Yeah, I guess you're right. Guess that means we'll just have to drag them all the way back with us kicking and screaming. Kakashi lifted an eyebrow as he looked towards the blonde. What? You think I'm going to trust them to walk back nicely without trying to stab Haku or me in the back? Forget it. They're staying tied up until we get to the Hokage's office. I don't care what kind of repercussions we have to deal with. Kakashi sighed again. This was definitely going to be one of his least favorite returns to the village. He did have to agree with Naruto, though. Those 2 would be far too much of a handful to just let them run loose. He wasn't worried about them actually succeeding in killing either of his companions, but if they got hurt in doing so, it would be on his head. Sasuke, as the last Uchiha, got extra special treatment, and the Haruno's mother was on the council. She had a pair of lungs that could only be rivaled by her daughter. When they got back to the village, they took a quick dip in the river to get the worst of the grime and gore off before heading back to the house. Tsunami had them stand outside as she got them towels and some dry clothes to wear. There wasn't really much of a place to change in the area, so they just took turns going into the shed nearby to slip on their new clothes after toweling off. Now dry and reasonably clean, they were allowed to enter the house, where they were met with a mixture of smiles and glares. The perky pair were sitting at one end of the table looking tired, but refusing to go to sleep without hearing exactly what happened. Since they were up, Kiba was up too, making sure they behaved. Tazuna was up out of worry, as was Tsunami, while Inari was asleep in a chair in the corner. Well, it was only one word, but considering who it came from, it sounded more like a scolding order as Sasuke poured as much venom into it as possible. Ignoring the boy, Kakashi addressed Tsunami. "If you wouldn't mind, some tea would be very nice right about now." Tsunami rushed off to the kitchen. "And some medical supplies if you have them." Hearing a confirmation from the woman, he sat down at the table as Haku and Naruto took the couch, just wanting to rest and recuperate after the recent ordeal. "Are you going to talk or just sit there, Hitaki?" Sasuke was now glaring at his instructor with a malice that would melt lesser men. But for someone like Kakashi who had seen hell, it was little more than a gnat. Annoying, yes, but harmless. Tsunami could feel the tension in the room when she re-entered. Being a civilian from a non-ninja village, she wasn't used to the amount of killing intent that was being thrown around the room. By the time she made it to the table, tea was spilling out of the cups from her shaking. Sasuke just smirked at her as Kakashi glared at him. "Before you go making demands, Sasuke, first make sure the person you are demanding information from is willing to give it. If not, then they must either be weaker than you, lower in rank than you, your charge, or your captive. Since I am none of the above and I am unwilling to share information with you, I will not answer you. Now calm yourself before I remove you from this room for being a threat to the mission." Sasuke was angry, but could do nothing in regards to his sensei. No matter, there were other ways. "Dope, tell me what happened." "No, team. Tell me now, Dope. I am an Uchiha, and I demand to know. You tell him, Naruto Baka. He deserves to know anything that goes on more than your worthless self." Sakura shrieked, causing Kiba to plug his sensitive ears from the pain as he put some distance between them. Naruto looked between Sasuke and Sakura before laughing in their faces. "Team, you don't outrank me, nor are you stronger. Which also means it'll be a cold day in hell before I'm your captive. There is no way I'm going to give you anything you want so you can piss off." Sasuke was quickly losing his cool, and they all knew it. Kakashi shifted in his seat to get a better push-off should he need it. "Grr. Fine then. You, girl, tell me what happened." "No, I don't think I will." Sasuke pounded his fist on the table, which only succeeded in Naruto getting ready for action as well. "I demand you tell me what I want to know. You are our captive, and you are outranked. Now tell me before I torture it out of you." He got up from his place at the table and started moving towards Haku, only to have Naruto step in front of him. "Move, Dope. I am questioning my captive, just as your little guidelines said I could. Now get out of my way." "No, you have no rights to question her either. She is not a captive. I have freed her from her bindings, and now she has already assisted us on this mission, even going so far as to kill her former partner. She is now a companion, and under my care. Not yours." Naruto narrowed his eyes dangerously. "I still outrank her, so she must answer my question." Kakashi answered this time, keeping his bored tone. "Actually, she is not a registered ninja. That makes her a civilian. No ninja outranks a civilian unless it's the Hokage, or we are in a time of crisis. The crisis for this mission has passed, and you are far from being the Hokage." Sasuke gave up trying to reason with the others and instead attempted to force Naruto out of his path as he pulled a knife off the table. He only made it half a step though before he was forced back into his seat by a very pissed-off Kakashi. "Get the fuck off me." He struggled against the Jonin for a few minutes before settling with glaring at him as hard as he could, willing the man to burst into flames. "I told you to calm down, you spoiled brat. If your parents were still alive to see you like this, they would be ashamed to call you an Uchiha." If Kakashi was hoping that would calm the boy down, he was sorely mistaken. "How dare you even think you know what my parents would say? I should kill you for even uttering my clan's name. You stole our eye and suddenly think you're better than us." Smack. Kakashi glared at the boy, making him cringe a bit despite his intentions. "Listen here, you little prick. I knew your family far better than you ever have. I had friends, teachers, teammates that were Uchiha. None of them behaved like you are now. If you had half the humility most of them did, you might make a decent human being." Kakashi shoved him back into his seat before turning around. "With any luck, after this mission is through, I will have enough reason to send you back to the academy, if not take you out of ninja service completely." Sakura looked horrified. "Why you can't do that, Kakashi-sensei?" When he fixed his gaze on her, she backed into the corner as he slowly walked towards her. "You Haruno, you should have never even been accepted as a ninja candidate. Book smarts get you nowhere if you can't apply them in the real world." Sakura looked on the verge of tears. Out of all the members of Team 7, I would say that Kiba has improved the most. He was able to engage in a fight, and the thought of using his own teammate probably never crossed his mind. He still needs to learn a lot, but he is on the right track to being a true ninja of Konoha. Sasuke couldn't stand it. He'd been humiliated more than ever before in his life. Back in the academy days, he was the best of the best, and now his sensei was telling him it all meant jack shit? What happened between then and now? What changed so much to make someone think he was less than the greatest? Sasuke looked around and his eyes fell on one person. Naruto, if you were still the dead last dope from before, no one would care a bit about you. You turned people against me that should have been helping me get stronger. Well, two can play that game. An eye for an eye. Sasuke jumped from his seat with the forgotten table knife in his hand and rushed towards Naruto. Seeing the blonde getting ready to engage him, he smirked and ducked to the side, now heading for his real target. Haku, who, though still tired, had begun to make her way over to provide him backup should he need it. It took all of 5 seconds, but it seemed to last an eternity. The dull blade gleamed in his hand as it shot forward. Tearing cloth was heard as silver disappeared in a spurt of red, and woman's scream could be heard throughout the surrounding area.
This was all for now. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked it and that you will be back for more. Please like, share and subscribe. See ya.